Hello everyone, welcome to our learning series of how to use Unreal Engine for architectural visualization. So moving on with the widget slide designs, we have come to our last button, which is the walkthrough. That in this walkthrough widget, we're gonna create a couple of items or tools that will enable us, for example, to see a mini-map or to take an image, and for example also the variant manager. So let's start by creating the walkthrough widget. So I'm gonna right click and create a widget. It names this walkthrough. And inside the selection menu, I'm gonna go to the walkthrough. Inside the graph, copy this blueprint, Control W, and then going back to the button and on clicked, I'm gonna connect this and make sure that we're gonna choose our walkthrough widget. Okay, so basically in this widget we're gonna create first the minimap or the ArchViz MiniMap that we're gonna use to represent an icon that will be the reference of this character moving on inside our project example. The ArchViz MiniMap is one of the most common items that get requested inside an ArchViz real-time presentation. So let's see how we're gonna create this minimap from scratch. Okay, first we should do a very rough render inside, for example, 3D Max that will represent our scene from top view without any 3D presentation or any shadows. So basically this is our scene. We have removed the ceiling because this is a ground floor representation, so we don't need any ceiling that will block the walls or the floor plan borders. But this is not the actual floor plan that we're gonna import to use it as the minimap. Inside Unreal Engine, we should create a rendered texture and then put the 3D Max render on top of it. So how to do that? First, let's hide the vegetation because we don't need to show this in a floor plan, and go to the modes here and type 2D, and we're gonna drag a scene capture 2D, which is a camera basically. We're gonna drag it into our scene and make sure its location on the X and Y is on the 0. And on the Y rotation, I'm gonna put this on a negative 90 degree because we want it to look down and to get the image from top. So let's move this, for example, let's say for example 5,000 distance from our project. And on the projection type, I'm gonna choose an orthographic because we're gonna need to present this in 2D without any 3D. And for the orthographic width, this is gonna represent our world environment. So basically, this is the value that we're gonna use later to define our minimap location for the reference character. So let's keep this number in our mind, and because we did a couple of trials before we do this, so I'm gonna put the number that we find suitable for our render texture, which is 15,000. Then I'm gonna right click, and from the material texture I'm gonna choose a render target, and let's name this ArchViz render target. Okay, so I'm gonna drag this into the texture target, and as you can see now, the camera that we have put it on top of our project example is now projecting the image into this render target tool. So I'm gonna double click this first to define the resolution of our map. Obviously this size is a little bit on a low resolution, so I'm gonna put this into 1024 by 1024, save, and let's right click and export this from asset action, and the only extension that we're gonna have suitable to be edited in our 2D software, let's say for example Photoshop, is going to be the HDR. So make sure that the name, okay, the ArchViz render target. Okay, so inside Photoshop I'm gonna open the HDR that we have just exported, and as you can see it's made in an HDR mood 32-bit. So we're gonna need to bring this to an 8-bit channel, and okay, merge it. And now as we can see, the image is a little bit more clearer than before. But this is not the one that we're gonna use inside our scene. We're gonna need to use our 3D Max render to put it on top of our floor plan that we got from Unreal Engine, and make sure to start adjusting its size and location, because this is basically what we want to edit. So somewhere here, I guess, I'm just gonna drop the opacity a little bit, and a little bit from top, side, yeah. So now that we have finished overlaying the same image, so I'm just gonna delete the base, keep this on 100% opacity, and save this as a PNG image. And obviously we have saved this before, but for the sake of the presentation we're gonna do this again. Okay, so now we're gonna import our image that we just saved, minimap texture, and now we don't need actually the ArchViz render target, but we just need to keep in our mind the number that we have put into orthographics. Okay, so I'm gonna delete both of them, the camera, render target, and the texture. Okay, so we're gonna need to add this image in our walkthrough widget. So inside the walkthrough widget, we're gonna add an overlay tool, and the overlay is basically a tool that will help us or enable us to add a widget on top of each other. To use, for example, later on, we're gonna use a character reference icon to use it on top of the minimap. So I'm also gonna add an image and drop this image inside the overlay. So I'm gonna name the overlay as the ArchViz, for example, base map, and make sure this is a variable to use it in the event graph. And for the image, we're gonna call this ArchViz MiniMap. Okay, so we're gonna need to call our image inside this. It's called the minimap texture. So minimap texture, and make sure that in our ArchViz map we're gonna set this size to canvas. Let's align it somewhere in the right corner, because this is one of the common location that most of us use when we present our map. Okay, so it's from here. I'm just gonna, sorry about that, that's from the alignment. So I'm gonna keep it on this side and then combine. So now we're gonna create another widget which represents the character reference that we're gonna be showing on this map. So let's create another widget and call this ArchViz character reference. Okay, double click this. The same thing, we're gonna bring an overlay to put a character reference on top of it, and then an image, and drag it inside the overlay. We're gonna bring in a character reference icon that we did earlier. We're gonna attach these two images on a link in the description below so you can use it. So back to our character reference and the map character reference. So inside the image, character, and choose again the size to canvas. Okay, so let's put the image size something smaller, because it's just a small icon, so I'm gonna put it to 40 by 40. And let's align this in the center. So I'm gonna just zero all the offsets. So okay, for now that's acceptable. Okay, so and also for the image we're gonna call this the Arch-viz reference and make sure it's a variable. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna set up the basic blueprint graph for this character to be visible in our map widget. So we're gonna use the event reconstruct, and I'm gonna bring my ArchViz character reference here and drag a node called set brush and connect it to our event reconstruct, and then from the end brush I'm gonna call a node called also make slate brush, and this is basically where we can use to adjust our icon inside the blueprint. So we set up the size to actually 40 by 40, and let's call our character reference representation, and then we can hit compile. Okay, so this is now our blueprint that we can use to enable our character reference on top of the map. But before we compile and save, we actually need to add another node from the event tech to enable this icon rotation on top of the map. So when the character moves right and left, it will also rotate on the same direction. So from the event tech, I'm gonna also bring our character variable. I'm gonna drag from this set render transform angle. I'm gonna connect our ArchViz reference, and we're gonna need to bring our character reference rotation also to drag it here. So I'm gonna get player character, and I'm drag from this a node called get world rotation mesh, and we're gonna right click and split struct bin, and we're gonna drag the yaw only because we need basically the direction of the yaw of the character. So our character now is set up, our character reference, and then we're gonna hit compile and save. Okay, back to our walkthrough minimap. So when we head to the graph, so the first thing we're gonna do is from the event construct, we're gonna create a widget, basically to call the character reference widget to be overlaying on top of this map. So I'm gonna call the ArchViz character reference widget, and I'm gonna promote this into a variable and name this as, let's say for example, character reference. And then I'm gonna drag my ArchViz base map and drag a node called add child to overlay, because I want to add this character widget on top of the overlay map. So I'm gonna connect it here, then I connect the character here, and then I'm gonna hit compile. So now if we do a small test and see how our map is displayed and our character reference is displayed through the small test. Okay, so going back to the walkthrough, let's maximize this so it's a little bit blurry, but start to activate. So our map is displayed and our icon is a little bit far from our map. So we need to position the character reference inside our minimap, and also we need to bring the opacity of the minimap a little bit down so we can see behind it. So I'm gonna go back to the walkthrough, and for the opacity, just straightforward, we can go to the appearance of the image inside the alpha channel. Let's put this to 0.6 for example, or 0.65, and hit compile. Okay, inside the graph, first we need to align our character reference in the middle of this minimap. So we're going to use a node called set horizontal alignment, and obviously we're going to call also another node to represent the vertical alignment, and we're going to choose them, both of them, in the center and connect them to our minimap target. So this also. So now if we hit compile and do a small just test to see if the character reference have come in the middle of the map. Okay, so walk through again, maximize. So as you can see now, the character reference have come into location of our character according to its alignment that was set up based on the texture map that we have set up when we put the camera on the 0 location. But right now, as you can see, the character reference is not moving with the character inside our scene. So let's set up the basic movement of this character reference to match our character inside the scene. So going back again to the walkthrough widget, we're gonna set up a function and call this, let's say, ArchViz character reference. Okay. So I'm gonna drag from the ArchViz character reference that we have just created, set render translation, and I'm gonna bring also my character reference as a variable connected to the target. Now we're gonna need to create a basic algorithm to enable our character reference to move into the same direction and the location of our scene target character. So I'm gonna basically get layer character, and I'm gonna drag from this get actor location. Okay, next we're gonna split this again and get the X and Y values, divide them. We're gonna divide this float over float and also the Y. And if you remember earlier, we said that we want to keep the number that we have set up into the render texture in our mind, which was 15,000, and also here 15,000. Just making sure correct number. Okay. So then we need to use the size of the map that we have also set up, which is 1024, to multiply it by the result. So I'm gonna choose float by float. So it's a small algorithm that will represent a value for the character reference. So this value that's gonna come from the X should be in my negative. So it's gonna be 1024, and this is gonna be also float multiplication, which will represent 1024, which is the size of the map. Okay. So we're gonna drag from this translation a vector to give us to connect the values of the result of the actor location to the character reference. So here we're gonna connect the Y to the X and the X to the Y, and then we can combine. So before we head to test this, we're gonna go to the event graph and we're gonna drag our event tick, and we're gonna drag our ArchViz character reference here, and we're gonna connect them all together and compile. So let's see how this is gonna go. Okay, so if we hit now, walk through, maximize, we have to find a way to give this rotation to the same way how it shows. So as you can see now, if we move our character reference, it is moving according to the character inside our scene. So the icon is a little bit big, so it's actually a little bit off the exact location. So if we go, for example, to this let's say this chair. So as you can see, it's a little bit off the offset, but it's just because we are actually playing with an icon that maybe the size need to be adjusted a little bit. But one way to give this a test is, as you can go, for example, to one of the corners, let's say for example to that corner over here, and make sure that our character reference is moving till the end of this. So I'm just gonna adjust it here to see if we have passed through the first landscape area. And basically you can tweak this more by adjusting the character, so it's a little bit off, but maybe this is because of the adjustments of the icon size. So basically this is how we can create a basic mini-map to represent our ArchViz location movements. Later on we're gonna create an extra elements on our walkthrough widget. Will represent a tick button to hide and display the mini-map, and also for the variant manager, and also add extra buttons to enable, for example, a camera to catch an image from our scene. So I hope this was clear enough for you to show how to set up the mini-map. And always remember that this is the setup of the camera, or the, let's say for example, the image that will represent your minimap texture is always subject to your judgment on how you want to show this. We have just set up a basic idea of a gray color, but you can also play with the normal floor colors that will represent white and black. So in the next video we're gonna continue on creating an additional items that will show and walk through a widget. So thank you very much for watching this, and see you in the next video.